Welcome to Human Recursos. Just Ask Jacob or Just Ask Jacobo, podcast where immigration and employment law meets real-world business challenges. I am your host, Jacob Monty from Monty and Ramirez. In each episode, I will sit down with leaders from across the industry to tackle big questions that keeps business owners up at night, from workplace compliance to immigration reform to everything in between. My guests bring questions, and I bring over 30 years of experience helping employers navigate these issues. If you're a decision maker navigating today's labor and immigration landscape, you're in the right place. Welcome, Chris Tripoli. Thank you for being our guest today, where we're going to talk about immigration in the restaurant industry. And you're the perfect person to talk about that because you've been involved in the restaurant industry for 40 years?
Yeah, a little longer actually. It's amazing how long time flies.
And now you're advising restaurants. You're talking about topics on the Corner Booth, which is a great podcast. I've been lucky to be one of your guests there. You also have the Restaurant Clinic, which is a great venue to get information to the entrepreneur. I also know that you are passionate about helping small businesses. You've invited me to address a small business, I forget what it was called, but the Small Business Resource Center that are sponsored by a number of universities. Do you still do that?
I do. What you're referring to is the Small Business Development Centers. It's an amazing service. It's funded partially by the SBA and then partially by the education center that it partners with. So most of these centers are partnered with universities or they're partnered with community colleges. And I think there's about 1,100 offices nationwide. I still think they're the best kept secret. But they're a resource for small businesses to go to get advice and to get some preparation, business planning, learn how to finance for expansion. And all of this education and resources are at their, are available upon request, and they're free of charge. So I've been a big proponent of those centers, and I work with their advisors on a regular basis.
Well, I know you're passionate about that. Let's get started. Chris, I want to tell you, I just came back from Kansas. I was helping some restaurateurs over there, and Kansas is seeing restaurant raids routinely. We're seeing I-9 audits, much more aggressive action than we're seeing in Texas. But I've been spending a lot of time in Kansas lately. I've been there over the last month, 2 different times. That's a snapshot of Kansas.
Absolutely.
But this is something that's happening everywhere. We've talked about California, and you could look on the headlines to see some of the enforcement actions, some of the raids we've seen in California. What have you seen from people talking, to you on your podcast and just friends you have in the industry? I know I saw you at the Texas Restaurant Association Expo. Tell us what you're hearing from your people on the ground.
Well, the concern is heightened. That's pretty much what I'm hearing, is that everyone has always been, mindful of proper immigration processes, proper documented workers. It's a major concern, obviously, in the industry. So we've always had that concern. But what I'm hearing now is that concern is really almost more elevated. It's more at a fear factor, of fear for making an error or having paperwork that isn't complete, or having an undocumented worker is going to now result into a unannounced raid, televised, horrible for business. That's what I'm hearing is small independent restaurant operators are all pretty much saying the same thing, Jacob. They're saying, we know we're part of a major industry. We know we are the second largest employer of people, in the nation. Hospitality is that big. They know that. They say, we know that we employ more people that are either in restaurants or bars or hospitals or serving somebody something than there are people building homes or drilling for oil or making cars. So are there going to be pockets where people are either wrong, undocumented, employers who are unknowledgeable or doing things incorrectly? Sure. But what people are feeling right now is that the restaurant industry is being singled out and being attacked. And we, don't deserve that. And certainly that's unneeded, publicity. So it's a little unfair, I think.
You mentioned the unwarranted publicity that happens, or the unwelcomed publicity. All publicity is not good, and restaurants want publicity, but you don't want to be highlighted in the media that your restaurant got raided, right?
Exactly. That is a big problem. You don't want that publicity. And what I think it also brings up? The second point, first point, of course, is that regular concern is now at the fear level. But I think the second point that you're hearing from a lot of people in the industry is anger. They're feeling that, we know that there is an immigration issue. We know that an unsecure border is a bad thing. We know that. But we also know that our politicians fail repeatedly to come up with a reformed program, a way to improve people who are here to get into the process, or people who are in the process to move along into, legal working status, green cards, eventual citizenship. There's got to be a way to make the process easier, faster, more efficient, cheaper. And I think everyone is at the point where they're just angry that we are picking on the fact that there might be too many people here that are wrong. Got it. But we're not picking on the big issue, which is why are we just not fixing our process?
Well, Chris, the president, who's been known for immigration enforcement, he used that to get elected in 2016. He promised the wall, but yet we saw in June of this year, he said for the first time that he was open to giving a working permits to farmers, and then he added restaurateurs to the list. And that was the first time in a very long time the president has said anything positive about possibly fixing the program. What did you make of that?
Well, that's hopeful, of course. That's a small little ray of sun, that is kind of breaking through what is otherwise, in my opinion, a very dark situation, because we've had years, well, more than years, decades of, I think, rhetoric about improving the system, and nothing's happened.
I loved what you said about both parties being to blame here, because, it's easy to get political and to say, well, this is, Republicans don't like, Hispanics, or, Republicans are after, Latinos or something. But President Obama still holds the record as deporting more people than any other president in history. So President Obama could have solved this problem when he had control of both houses of Congress, and he didn't. It's not just one party that can be blamed here for the problems we have.
Well, you're right. No, of course you're right on target. It's hard, I know, not to be political about this issue, but it goes back in my memory as far back as the Clinton years, the George W. Bush years, as well as, like you said, the Obama years. We've had, the Trump years. We have had a lot of rhetoric, a lot of discussion. And of course, deportation is a part of the situation. We know that. There's always going to be some deportation, people who get noticed, people who fail to go, people who are applying for asylum. They don't get the asylum, they get their deportation notice, and they say, heck with it. Okay, so deportation is it's a part of the process. There's always going to be some. I get that. I just am so happy that we finally had a little bit of talk about other parts, bigger parts, more positive parts of the process, like work permits, green cards. Let's move these people along who want to stay. They are good to stay. They're needed. And don't you think with today's technology, we can move so much faster to check people out? I realize there's some people here that even if we like them, if they're running from the law or if they're criminals, they're never going to become citizens. We know that. Okay. But I don't think we need to just make all of our decisions based on that 5 or 10%. We've got so many people who are here. And they're good people. They're working hard. They're paying their rent. Kids are in school. They just want to get their documents corrected. Why can't we move them along?
Absolutely. And the cool thing I think that makes it possible to get a deal done, if the president were to embrace it, is the bar is very low. No one's even asking for permit for citizenship or even permanent residency. A working permit would be fine right now. And, so we're not asking for citizenship right now. Immigrant rights groups aren't asking for that now. We know that, we need to start somewhere, and the place to start is working permits. Chris, I got to mention Sonny Bono, the former restaurateur who made it to Congress as a politician.
Yeah.
Remember his, I'm really reaching to the past now, to the 80s, but did you ever go to his restaurant in Palm Springs?
I did not. I missed that. No, I didn't. But you're right. He's a great story. I mean, entertainer, restaurateur, and congressman.
And, one of the issues that he championed was getting, back then it was the 86 immigration reform passed into law, but, that was something that he championed, and he worked on it as a restaurateur, and then, it became law, and then he became a politician. But it certainly seems like restaurants we need to listen to restaurateurs like you and others that want this issue fixed once and for all.
Right. And I think you hit the right point. Fixing the issue doesn't mean we're looking at like just blanket approval. We do need rules. We need restrictions, of course. If you and I went to another country, we'd have to follow their rules and their restrictions to stay, to visit, to work, to become a resident, et cetera. So yeah, we do. We are a country of rules and regulations. I get it. And we need to follow them. I just think we need to make them a little better. And we certainly need to make them a little bit easier and more accessible when it comes for people wanting to stay and work, and workers that can, become residents. And we have more work to do. So I hope we get to see some of that.
Chris, I got to dive into your vast memory. This weekend, I got to talk with a restaurateur, has a number of restaurants in Kansas, and he was telling me, Jake, he told me in Spanish, he didn't call me Jake, he called me Jacobo, but that's the Spanish equivalent of Jake, if you will. But he was telling me, look, he goes, I got started working for Mama Nympha in Houston.
Wow.
And he said, back then, her cooks were women. She didn't want guys cooking. She thought that guys didn't know what they were doing in the kitchen. And he started out as a dishwasher, but then kind of realized, hey, I'm going to learn how to cook. And they taught him how to cook. And so he worked at Nympha's for many years. And then he went to work at a restaurant called Chi-Chi's. Do you remember them?
I do. I remember Chi-Chi's was a chain, and they came out of the Midwest, and they were big in Oklahoma as well. They had some locations in the state of Texas for a while.
So he said he left Nympha's, and then he worked at Chi-Chi's, and then of course the immigrant story. Worked also at the Hilton by the Hobby Airport. Had two jobs, saved up a bunch of money, and then Chi-Chi's tells him, okay, sir, you get a choice. We're going to make you kitchen manager. You could go to Cancun. They were contemplating opening, maybe they did open a store in Cancun, or you can go to Kansas. And he chose Kansas, and then, got there in 89, and then, has a chain of restaurants over there. But I was just, I knew I had heard the name, but I figured you would be the person that would know about Chi-Chi's.
I can't think of another industry, but well, of course, it's a little difficult. I have spent no time working in other industries. I'm just a lifer. So I certainly feel for this gentleman, because I understand my early days. I worked, I bussed tables. I learned working in the kitchen, liked it, became into management, was very fortunate to own my own restaurants. I've never left the industry, as this gentleman in Kansas. And I just don't think there's any other industry that has that kind of pattern, that has this. We have such a large percentage of people who start as workers. And if they really get into it and they enjoy the industry, something happens. They get connected, they never leave. They manage, they supervise, they go borrow an SBA loan, or they get some friends and families together. They own restaurants. So the percentage of workers to owners in food service has to be the absolute highest of any other industry, because there are so many people today telling that same kind of story.
Yeah, no, it's a great industry. That's why I feel lucky to have been embraced by the industry. I think I met you in the 90s during the Restaurant Association days. And it's a very welcoming industry. It's an industry where minorities and women have been welcomed probably more than any other industry around.
I think so. It made that kind of impression on me. I'll tell you a quick story. I'm 15 years old in Phoenix, Arizona. It's my first real job. I'm in the kitchen of a really nice high-end steakhouse called the Colony Steakhouse. Ralph Gaines and his wife Betty were Kansas City Stockyard Steakhouse, and they opened a second one in Phoenix, Arizona, and that's where I was working. So as an impressionable kid, my eyes are wide open. I'm in the kitchen, and I'm working with people who speak English and Spanish. I'm working with men and women. I'm working with white and black. Everyone's working together. We're all getting along. It's all about the work. I just thought the world was like this. I didn't realize that, oh my God, there's really, really big issues in other industries where no. Equality, same job, same pay, that our industry seems to be a whole lot better than that. My first management position, I remember I replaced a lady. She was in charge of banquet sales, and they gave me that job to be in charge of the banquet sales when she left. Now, I wasn't paid as much as her. Obviously, I was new. She was experienced. So imagine my surprise when I realized that most other industries in the world were griping about just the reverse. Inexperienced, lesser qualified guys are all making more than women. I didn't see that in our business.
No, we don't. Your merit counts. It's what you bring to the table. I got to talk to you about kitchen Spanish, and all the restaurant folks that I know, especially, even the ones that aren't Hispanic, they know the rudimentary words in Spanish. Tell me about that. You had to learn and communicate in some kitchen Spanish, right?
Yes, most people do. And I plead guilty to the fact that I was horrible in that. In all my years working in different restaurants, you would think my Spanish would be so much better. But what I did learn to do, though, and this was just a beautiful thing because it really helped managers, front of the house, back of the house, new, experienced workers all be able to communicate. We started doing years and years ago, all important documents, English on one side, Spanish on the other. So if you were a prep cook, your prep list, English and Spanish, all the recipes, English and Spanish, all the rules and restrictions, so everyone could feel like understanding isn't going to be a barrier. And it also helped a lot of people who were, say, Spanish only learn a little English, and they were happy to do so. And it really helped our English-speaking people understand, the Spanish worker a lot better.
No, that's great. And I know you've helped companies franchise, and that those manuals that I've seen that you've done, always the basic stuff had to be in both languages to facilitate the training.
Absolutely. It makes so much sense. And you're right. There's a tremendous amount of franchise growth in our industry. That seems to be on an increase. People seem to want to maybe get into our industry, but instead of starting from scratch, they'll purchase rights to do an established brand. And we're not talking about the big boys, Popeyes, Burger King, McDonald's. We're talking about the small regional chains that might have 4 or 5 units, and they're growing through franchising. It's a major trend.
On the immigration front, one thing that has changed, and you've heard me give seminars over the years. In the past, I used to tell employers, copy the documents the employee presents to you when you're completing the I-9, because copying proves that you looked at something, and it'll make audits down the road easier. If perhaps you didn't write everything down correctly, you could always look at the copy. And copies were a way to show good faith. And ICE in the past used to look at copies in a favorable way. They would say, look, at least this company is copying the documents. We can know now that they looked at something. These numbers weren't just made up. effective this year, as a result of some of the changes we've seen by ICE, we're telling employers now, don't copy anymore. I mean, if you've copied in the past, keep the copies you've made, don't destroy them.
Sure.
But effective this day forward, don't copy. What have you, what have you seen from, different restaurants over the years? And do you have any comments on that?
Well, I do. I'd like to use this as a moment just to comment on how important that advisement is. My comments to restaurant operators today is don't try to assume on your own you know what you're doing. Follow the written instructions, yes, of course, but you need to stay close to the legal specialists who understand our industry. So, see, that would be my comment to them would be, are you listening to Jacob Monty and his partners? They specialize in this industry. If you're recommending that we don't take copies any further, they're not an advantage. They could possibly be a disadvantage. See, that I'm telling people, are you staying current on advisement? Because that's what we need to do now. Restaurant owners and managers, that's one of the critical things that we try to do is constantly remind them that resources are available. You're not alone. Don't think you know everything. That's when we make our mistakes. And so this is too important. How to handle I-9s, how to be prepared, for say an investigation or an audit, what to do and what not to do. These are really important legal points, and every restaurant operator needs to stay close to their restaurant association, needs to keep getting their updates, follow their advisement, search out hospitality specialists that understand labor law, like, of course, you. And then they're doing the best that they can do.
Chris, I'm going to ask you to look in your crystal ball. And I know you talk to small business owners. Well, if you were to talk to someone today that was thinking about the restaurant industry, in light of the report of raids in California and Chicago and Kansas, and in light of increased food costs, possible tariff problems, is this still an industry worth getting into? I mean, is it easier a way to make a buck? I mean, what do you tell this person? Is there any light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, God, what a great situation you posed. Yes, I'm always tending to be a little bit more of an optimist than otherwise. I do think that there is, a light at the end of the tunnel. I do think that, yes, this is an industry that is in demand. So is this a good time to be in the restaurant business? Well, just as you mentioned, there are a tremendous amount of hurdles to overcome. But dining out in our country is not a luxury. It is a society item. It's what we do. We either hit a drive-through or we order for online curbside or we get our favorite delivery or we go out, we plan events. We are a social industry. So it's a big, big thing to feed that mindset. Is it tremendously competitive? Absolutely. So I tell people who are thinking about wanting to get into industry that they really need to think twice and they need to be really well prepared. This is not an industry to be scared, really, but it is an industry where you need to be totally prepared. So if you're not really willing to be totally prepared, well budgeted, if you're not willing to surround yourself with advisement, then I would tell you stay in what you're doing because it's just too costly to make the mistake of getting, say, a wrong location. And if you're not going to use a real estate specialist that understands the industry, you might trip and get the wrong location. And that's too costly. Now you've got a personal guarantee and you've got a long-term. And although we can change many things in our business, we can change food, service, train staff, fire managers. The one thing you can't change is your location. So I start with that. If you're not going to get financial advisement, if you're not going to get labor and legal advisement, then you're not going to be well prepared. And I would say skip it. But if you're really going to do this right, it's a wonderful industry. It's horribly competitive, we know, but it is a wonderful industry and it's still in demand.
It's interesting. That was the assessment I got from my clients that I spoke with this weekend, because they were still optimistic. They said, look, we're hopeful that the president, because he's a businessman, will lead on this issue. They hope that, that the words that he said will turn into some concrete action. On the positive side, the southern border is pretty much secure for the first
Right.
time in decades. The president deserves credit for that. And, if he were to champion this issue, I looked at some recent polling by the ABIC, American Business Immigration Coalition, that shows doing something positive for immigrants polls very highly, even among Republicans. So,
Yeah.
this is something the country seems to want. The president seems to have an opportunity to do something, and we'll just have to wait and see, if it happens. But in the meantime, employers have to be prepared with I-9s. They have to redouble their efforts. I always tell my clients and people that listen to me, test your I-9s before ICE does. Do an internal audit and look at the I-9. Make sure that it's completed properly. It's now a one-page form, and Section 1 must be completed by the employee. Section 2 is completed by the employer. And then there's a supplement B that's completed by the employer when an employee has a limited work authority document. But until we get some hopefully good news on work permits, employers, restaurateurs have to be ready for increased enforcement.
Sure. Sure. No, I think you hit the nail right on the head, and I'm happy that there was some recent polling and happy with the way that it was found, because I think, that I'm so involved in just this one industry, so I see what it's saying, but I would think that, yes, outside our industry, just through our country, that there is an acceptance of the fact that we have millions of people here. And if we're not asking for anything crazy like just blanket amnesty or instant citizenship or, things that are crazy. But if we're just asking for improved programs to get workers to work legally, and then where they go from there towards their citizenship process, if we can just get things reformed so that they can be more effective, more efficient, weed out those that are never going to make it, because, we know that there are some that aren't. We're always going to be needing to deport those who, again, aren't fitting, aren't going to be accepted, don't qualify, got their their whatever it was, their visitation program overextended. That was a story that I just heard recently. Somebody came here as a visitor, and then again, big surprise. Well, their visit was up, and I don't know how many years later, person was here just thinking, yeah, but I'm here. Why shouldn't I be able to use goods, services, and work and what? Ouch. We can't go to other countries and do that. So anyway, summing up, we know that rules have to be here. But if we really can get something started, like the president said just a month or so ago, and start with work permits and make things more realistic in this country, the country will be better off, and I think millions of people will be happy.
Great words of wisdom. And I guess to our listeners, I would encourage everyone to contact the American Business Immigration Coalition, ABIC, to contact the local restaurant associations, the state restaurant associations, the National Restaurant Association. Chime in, let your voice be heard, and then also chime in with congressmen, because congressmen do listen to calls. If they get calls from constituents, from small business owners calling for some immigration reform, as Chris said, not amnesty, but work permits for people that aren't criminals, people that have been here a long time, they will listen, and we can get something done. Chris, thank you so much. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you think our listeners and others would love to or should know about this issue?
Well, just appreciate those who are in the industry. It's a needed industry. We learned that, I think, post-COVID. People really missed that socialization. Well, COVID's long gone, but we still need to appreciate and do a better job, I think, of accepting one another in this day and age of different beliefs. Go out, go up more than you have been. That's the best thing you could do. Not everyone, Jacob, really needs to own a restaurant. Really, not everyone. Everyone just needs to go out and, dine out more often and have fun with it and get to know those operators and support them because they're there supporting your community.
Chris, let me ask you the last question. We've heard so much about AI and robotics, and you're still, you have your finger on the pulse of this industry. Is technology ever going to do away with the food service worker in the front or back of the house? Could you talk about that?
Oh, absolutely. I think there's going to be some use, some positive use of AI that's going to help us to control product, control production. And does that mean it's going to become more efficient and we might actually use fewer people in some positions? That's possible. I mean, it's not tomorrow, but it's coming. But there's a lot of other advantages to AI and technology that's just going to help us better manage our businesses. In some type of limited service situations, the idea of the kiosk is really getting popular. Does that save on a counter, server, greeter, cashier, whatever they're called? It does. It's being well accepted by the public. So I think the idea of technology going into where there's limited service is really going to be easier to accept. But no, it's not really invented or ever intended to replace the maitre d', to replace front of the house staff. There's still going to be the service, part of the service industry. And so we're looking for AI to help us better manage, but become more efficient and be more profitable, but not really replace us.
Great. So what about robots in the back of the house?
There's some in very large production facilities where we're already seeing that, where there's the use of some robotics in kitchen production for portioning, for prepping. But this isn't the kind of thing that we can see that's going to be mainstream. Not every neighborhood restaurant is going to be saving a lot of labor by doing this, nor are they going to be able to afford the idea of switching their machinery to robotics. So in some cases, it makes sense. In many cases, it won't.
So any politicians listening, even with AI and robotics, we still need some reasonable relief with regard to work permits for immigrants, because yes, there's going to be some improvements on AI and maybe robotics, but you're still going to need to have humans in the restaurant.
It's a people business. It really is. And like I said, sure, technology is doing a lot for us. And yes, robotics has its place, but it's in some production areas, not all. It doesn't really save the need to have people. Even if we had slightly fewer people, we're still going to be one of the absolute largest employment bases in the country.
Great. Chris, thank you so much for this opportunity and for all of your help throughout the years of recommending our firm and always championing me and the firm. Thank you so much. And I look forward to discussing other issues with you again.
Absolutely. Jacob, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure. Good to see you.